Do you feel something? I think it's the shifting tectonic plates of the Gilmore Girls' romantic lives absolutely in shambles, because these 4 episodes, let me tell you, these 4 episodes were some of the more dramatic. Like, I already named last week's video for the batch of episodes, like the Lorelai's lives are getting too messy, but like this week, I actually feel like their lives got sincerely messy. So let's start with episode 13 on a little bit of a lighter note. Yay for Paris and Rory progress in the episode Concert Interruptus. I really enjoyed this episode. As someone who was definitely a nerd in high school, I really related to Paris in this episode because the judgment of other people not spending enough time on studying while also like being a little bit aggressive about the way that she judges her friends and a little bit aggressive about like, sorry, I just want like a good future for myself. Sorry, like I want to better my life. I really related to that, and nothing made me happier than when she got to watch the friends of hers who she are clearly not good friends to her, clearly not good friends to Paris, get absolutely reamed by Lorelai for sneaking out of the concert. I loved that so much. I really like to see Paris and Rory's relationship come along, because as much as I do love Lane, like I feel like Paris is competing now with Luke for being one of my favorite characters in this show, and I just want to get to see more screen time with her. And I feel like we do that by getting her and Rory closer. I'm really enjoying the progression of their relationship, their frenemy status, and the fact that like when they're both completely alone together, they really do like align and relate. But when anybody else is around, like they're kind of struggling with that relationship. I also really loved getting to see her at the concert, like really clearly, truly enjoying herself. Paris is such an interesting character because to me, she kind of could be kind of like a Lorelai, where like her parents have all this money but are a little bit neglectful of her. Not neglectful in like an actual need sense, but like they don't know their own daughter. It definitely seems like she doesn't really get attention at home, and she's clearly an only child. So I like the parallels of her with Lorelai. I also loved the conversation between Rory and Paris about Tristan, and the fact that Paris is like, I've known him for so long, I've had a crush on him for so long, you just don't understand him the way that I do. And like, yeah, he's a little bit of a jerk, but like also he has a soft side, he has a lot going on at home. I liked the fact that she's attracted to this boy because he also has a difficult home life, and that they've probably related about that in the past. But yeah, he is still a jerk. Like I love Paris, and I'm really excited to get to see more of her as the show goes on. But my other favorite part of this episode was getting to see Lorelai absolutely read those girls. It very much felt like she was tapping into Emily Gilmore in this moment, and I really loved her. Like, she's like, door to door, like I will find these girls, because it highlighted what a good mother she is. I can be the fun mom, but as long as you're on your best behavior. And I really think that this episode highlighted her parenting style, and the fact that like with Rory, she doesn't have to pull this side of her out because Rory is generally a very good kid, very well behaved. But I love the fact that in this episode, when push came to shove, she was like, absolutely not. I'm telling on you to your parents, like you will not have this, like this behavior will not continue under my watch. Like I will not be the one associated with this. And it's almost like she does that because she knows what other people's opinions of her might be. But it's like, she's a good mom. She's a good mom. She's a responsible adult. And I loved that. Going on to episode 14, I have some potentially unpopular takes. I actually don't hate Dean's opinion on the Donna Reed show. I think what Dean is kind of trying to say, but he's 16-year-old boy and he's not expressing it the right way, is that he likes the concept of this like family life, them all sitting down for dinner together. I get where Rory is coming from, where her perspective is clearly not that that's a bad thing on its own, but the fact that the mother has absolutely no choice, no career. And I think it's kind of supposed to be this model for, as they pursue this relationship together, Rory definitely wants a little bit more than just being a housewife, but Dean seems to be really attracted to that idea, and I think Rory's pushing back because she doesn't want to think that Dean would force her to be this way. However, I'm going to defend Dean a little bit because Dean has read Tolstoy books for Rory. He's very smart. He appreciates her intelligence. He hasn't tried to limit her in any way thus far in the series, and so I don't have as big of an issue with him liking this show or like this argument that he and Rory get into. Rory doing the whole housewife thing and cooking them dinner, to me, read not as like her trying to be this beautiful little housewife to like please Dean, but to me read as, I have been a young girl in a teen relationship that I am desperately trying to get other people to take seriously, and I think that this was a way for Rory to exercise a little bit of independence and act a little bit like an adult. She's playing house a little bit with this boy that she really deeply cares about, and I did not see it as this like horribly negative thing. Is her whole outfit and get up a little cringy? Yeah, because I do think they're like the same thing could have been achieved in a different way, and I do think that this like tradition versus like Lorelai's like kind of untraditional path is going to, as we'll see in one of the episodes we'll talk about in a couple minutes, that is going to create a little bit of a rift between them and kind of their perception of what they want this relationship between the two of them to be. However, this episode particularly, like, I was kind of like, let's cut Dean a little bit of slack. Let's give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here. I just didn't feel like it was all that negative. Again, I do see where Rory's coming from. I do see where Dean is coming from. And I think it's just at the end of the day, like, if they were communicating a little bit better and saying like, hey, I just don't want to be a housewife one day. I want to have a career and I want to do these other things in addition to maybe, you know, having kids, having dinner ready on the table. I think that would be a little different. But of course, they're teenagers. They're not supposed to be talking in this like super mature way. I'm gonna give them both a little bit of grace for this. More importantly in this episode though, do we get the most insanely flirty banter vibes between Lorelai and Luke when they're at the diner. They're talking about repainting it, redoing it. Luke only agrees to do it because Lorelai's gonna help him. I loved this. And then he comes to help her look for the bird. And I love the fact that other people were commenting on it. However, as we'll see in the next 2 episodes, this has been brutal for me because one of my things going into the show is that I knew that Luke and Lorelai had something going on between them. I did not think that was until much later in the show. And so for the show to start out with the concept of Luke and Lorelai already being flirty to the point that everyone else around them that knows them is like, what's going on? What's this relationship? Like, what is this? Who is he to you, Lorelai? The fact that both Emily and Sookie in this episode are like, well, why'd you call him though? But why'd you call him though? It makes me like, oh my god, I'm gonna have to wait through like 4 or 5 seasons to see them get together, and that is just a little bit brutal. But I did love it, and I did giggle and kick my feet the whole way through, and I did think it was really funny when both Luke and Dean like see each other outside and they're kind of like, what's going on, you know, kind of thing. I just thought that was hilarious. So I did really enjoy this episode. I do feel like I was supposed to be more mad at Dean, and I just wasn't. But don't worry, Dean, you're not fully off the hook. We'll get to you in a little bit. Episode 15, Christopher returns. Boo hiss. The second that Christopher returned at the end of the episode 14, I was like, he's gonna be a love interest, isn't he? And sure enough, he shows back up, and obviously there's still like some things unaddressed here. I did like the fact that this episode did address for me, without having to wait till like season 2 or 3, the fact that yes, Rory does know her father. They see them every year for Christmas. Yes, Lorelai and him have a little bit of feelings left for each other, which I understand. They obviously had this like very passionate teen love, and then obviously they have a daughter now from it. I think the most interesting revelation about this episode was the fact that Christopher was willing to marry Lorelai, and Lorelai was the one that said no, and it wasn't like a mutual decision on their behalf, even though Lorelai has definitely talked about it that way. And I think the reason why is because we see this episode, Christopher, not to throw shade at my boy Jeremiah, because he really redeemed himself by the end of season 3, but he is the Jeremiah of this show. He is, let's see, is he fun? Check. Yeah, he's fun time. Christopher is a good time. He's a time and a half. Is he financially responsible? Another check, unfortunately. Yes, he is financially responsible. His credit card gets declined trying to buy a book for his daughter, and also why is he trying to buy the most expensive book for his daughter rather than just like a book? And then 3, is he also looking for a wife that would be a mother to him, take care of him? Yes, unfortunately, check again. I fear that he's not beating the Jeremiah and Belly allegations here when he's trying to kind of get back together with Lorelai, and he's kind of proposing like, well, maybe it will work this time, like maybe we could work something out. Lorelai has to be the one that's like, no, this is not going to work for me, this is not going to happen. I really admire Lorelai for that, because I do think in a lot of ways, not that Christopher is a bad guy, and not that Christopher would like, again, ruin their entire life, but I do think there's an aspect of Christopher's personality, the way he handles himself. Like, he wouldn't have become like the Gilmores or his parents, right? He would have, like, they still would have struggled as much. It's just that Lorelai wouldn't have been able to make some of the moves that I think she knew she needed to make to be a good mother and a responsible mother to Rory and to take care of herself and a child. But she's also gotten to do it on her terms, which I think has made her a lot happier versus having to do it on Christopher's terms. He doesn't fully defend Lorelai in the way I kind of wanted him to his own parents. He's a little bit standoffish. He's a little bit of like, I don't want to say coward, but he's a little bit scared of it. Christopher, I like him. I get what Lorelai sees in him, but I just think like it's for the best. And I think Lorelai knows that. And that's why at the end of the episode, she sends him away and she says to Rory, even though Rory's kind of begging that like, she's to make the hard decision here and go like, even though I might still have some feelings and a love that will never go away for this man, and even though like I see him trying, like he's not where he needs to be, like we have a direction to go. And I also think like I don't think Rory would be the kid that she is if Christopher was kind of involved, because I think there's an element there of recklessness that Rory has a little bit of, that of course comes from Lorelai too. I'm not saying Lorelai's a saint, but yeah, I really love that this episode touched on a lot of generational issues and kind of conflicts all in one episode, which that I think that the show shines when it does that. But in this episode was so great because we have all the Christopher and Lorelai stuff. At the same time, you have the subplot, the fact that Lorelai is getting distracted and literally throwing away the good name she's built and the person she's tried to be in this town when she doesn't show up to help Luke paint, and instead she's with Christopher. You see the person that Lorelai might have become had she kept Christopher in her life a little bit more permanently. That was just a twist the knife moment. I'm already having to see them flirt with each other. I'm already having to see Lorelai be with Christopher and not be with Luke, and then now you're gonna have her miss painting. Ooh, that hurts. I also really love the conversation that Emily has after kind of the big conflict between the two sets of parents, and specifically Lorelai, happens when Emily takes Rory aside and is basically hey, I know that all of this is being talked about and it all has to do with the way that you came into this world, but please know that for never 1 second were you unwanted, never for 1 second were you a regret of ours, never for 1 second do we have any negative emotions tied towards you. And I love that she was the one that clarified that, because I did kind of feel, okay, she has so much animosity towards her daughter that now it's being pointed towards almost her granddaughter instead, and you really feel in that moment that Emily has so much love for Rory, and through that so much love for Lorelai, that just because this issue was not handled in the way that Emily and Richard felt it should be, that is where the hurt and the pain and the anger and the issues comes from. And I love that. And then also you get that moment with Lorelai and Richard where Richard's basically don't you understand, everything you want for Rory, I wanted for you. You kind of rejected me being able to provide the best for you that I could. And I think it's interesting because now Lorelai is at the point in her life where she does see her own daughter being okay, maybe I'm not going to make the decision that you want me to make, Mom, or maybe I'm going to rebel against you. And this is the first time they're all having to deal with this. And this episode really shined for me. 5 out of 5 stars. This episode, I think, just captured the magic of what the premise of the show is. Generational relationships. There's hurt, there's pain, there's things that don't fully get forgiven, things that don't go away, people that don't forget, that come back up and create new issues for people. This just felt very real. This felt like an episode of This Is Us, which if you've been on the channel long enough, I love. I think this was the best episode in this run of episodes that I watched for this video. And then episode 16, Star-Crossed Lovers and Other Strangers, this one almost sent me into an early grave. Let me tell you, this episode had so much happening that I was stressed out, okay? First of all, let's handle the Rory and Dean of it all. As much as I gave Dean a pass in the Donna Reed episode, as much as I gave him a pass of yeah, he's a little bit more of a traditional boy, but maybe they can work this out. Dean kind of feels in this episode yes, it's their 3-month anniversary, and yes, it is very nice that he's taking Rory to this very nice restaurant and taking her to the Stars Hollow festival, and he's building a car for her, but this is a lot of intense love that he's piling onto her, and then to add I love you onto it would be one thing in and of itself, but then the fact that he gets mad at Rory for not being able to say it back, despite knowing Rory has just been faced with the fact that her mother is always going to love her father a little bit, but there's an element of their relationship that will never work that isn't good for either of them. And I think Rory, even as much as she would love her parents to be together, she recognizes that. And so for Dean to kind of pile onto these emotions that Rory has kicking around in her for the first time, I didn't love it. I just didn't love the way he handled it. I get being hurt. I don't understand why this was a breakup and not a fight, which obviously I haven't watched the episode after this yet, so I don't know if they quickly rekindle and make up. I don't know what's going to happen. But I think this was the episode where it felt a little bit to me like he's being super sweet, and I get in his head why he's I don't understand why she wouldn't say I love you back. It was to me a little bit buddy, you're going very, very fast. It's been 3 months. You're 16 years old. We're going to need to slow this down a little bit. And I totally respect Rory's point of view that it's not that I don't love you, I just am not ready to say that yet. And again, there's an element here of them being 16 and not communicating properly and not being able to say exactly where they're coming from. And even if she could, I don't think Dean would be receptive towards it, which is why I have issues with the way that he handles this. And I do understand that Dean's anger is coming at this from the perspective of he's I don't want you to not be in love with me and restrict your own life because you're scared of some of the things that you perceive as mistakes that your mom made in the past. I do get that level of hey, this kind of isn't about your parents at all, it's kind of about you and me. I understand that he's being selfish here, and I understand where he is coming from, but I do think that this is just such a strong reaction after having such I don't want to call it love bombing because he really genuinely is being sweet until that moment, but the fact that he's immediately so pissed that he's just they break up, he takes her home. It's just kind of sad to me, and that's kind of frustrating. So I am starting to lose a little bit of that, like, oh, Dean's perfect kind of thing. Not that I thought Dean was perfect, but I am starting to lose a little bit of, like, the generosity I was giving him a couple episodes earlier, just because I'm like, Rory is just a teenager too. Like, I get you're a teenager, you're hurting each other, but like, if you really do love her, I think you need to have a little bit more of a mature approach to this, you know what I'm saying? And then the other person causing me issues in this episode is Rachel. When she shows up, I was just like, of course Christopher leaves, and Rachel immediately shows up. Again, this show is so good at setting up kind of these like 3-episode arcs, and it's not like each 3 episodes are tied together in the way that like Andor is, but they're like, okay, a couple episodes before this, they set up the like sale that they're having, and you like introduce the concept of Rachel. And then it's kind of like goes away for a little bit. And then the second that you think like, oh, maybe Luke and Lorelai could like admit their feelings for one another, go on a date or something, boom, Rachel shows back up. Same way as like Christopher was introduced couple episodes earlier when Rory finds that picture. You're kind of like, are we ever going to meet Christopher? Boom, Christopher shows back up on his motorcycle. So I love the fact that the show is able to do that. However, it is painful to me because now every single time something like that happens, I know I'm going to be set up for pain just a few episodes later. It's really the frustration of the fact that I really didn't think that Luke and Lorelai's feelings for each other or anything was going to be addressed by themselves or by anyone else in the town until much later in the show. And then potentially you'd have their like romantic drama. I very much thought it was going to be a Monica and Chandler type thing of like later on, like, it kind of makes sense that these two characters would have feelings for each other. Kind of makes sense. And the fact that it's like off the bat, it's killing me a little bit. Again, I should have known that the slow burn is going to get me every single time, and it's going to be painful every single time in some way or another. So it's 100% my fault. It's not Miss Rachel's, but the fact that she's here, she's beautiful, she's compelling, she's charismatic. I get it, but I kind of don't, like, I just am like, just don't want to have to deal with it, because I don't want to see Luke get his heart broken and then be like difficult towards Lorelai, and then Lorelai end up with like a Mr. Medina 2.0 and then blah blah blah. But I'm here, I'm along for the ride at this point, so I've committed, so you know, don't worry about it, I'll be there. And then my MVP of this episode is the fact that Richard lets Lorelai sneak out rather than spending one more minute with that boring boy. But even the fact that Richard can tell that this man is like boring, and he lets her sneak out of the house, I loved it, especially after the fact that they just had a fight like 2 episodes ago about the whole Christopher thing. I just really love that we get to have that moment with him. I feel like right now my top 3 characters are probably Luke, Paris, and Richard. I really like the fact that like they have that moment where she's like, I know this represents absolutely everything you feared having a daughter, and I know we just fought about this, but like please actually don't make me sit at this dinner. So those are all the episodes recapped. Let me touch on a couple of different outfits that I wanted to touch on. My absolute favorite look is Lorelai's look when she's at the Stars Hollow like bonfire thing after sneaking out of the dinner. I just feel like in this moment, for some reason, the way like her headband matches his hat and her scarf matches his gloves, they both have this kind of like layered top going on, and I feel like it really leans towards like they're so in tune, but like they're not quite there yet, like they're still friends. And they're literally actively talking about the fact that she snuck away from a date and his girl is like, oh, Rachel's off somewhere. I just love that moment. I do really love Rory's pink dress to go to dinner. It feels very mature in a way that kind of mirrors the fact that I think she's being very mature about the situation of like, hey, I love you is like a little bit more complicated thing for me, like especially after the fact that she's kind of been able to like give Dean a little bit and give him some grace in terms of the whole Donna Reed situation. But it just hurts too, because it feels like she's letting herself be girly. She's finally comfortable in this relationship. She's really like celebrating the fact that they've been together for 3 months. So, like, it has this girly, fun, like, growing into a young woman thing, only for her to, like, realize that growing into a young woman also means, like, your first heartbreak and how devastating that is for her. That is all I have for you for today's recap of Gilmore Girls. And I also wanted to give you guys a huge thank you, because we just hit 6,000 subscribers on this channel, which, as you know, was my goal. Just a few days into October, we have hit it. It means the absolute world to me. Our next goal is 6,500, so about 490 something from now, that's the goal. So if you are not subscribed subscribed and you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate you joining our little community of fangirls. I will be back with more episodes of Gilmore Girls. In fact, I want to do some live watching and reacting to the episodes, potentially of this season finale and the start of season 2. I just haven't figured a date for that because I feel like it would be a nice way to close out the first season of Gilmore Girls, but also celebrate this great milestone. So as soon as I figure out when that's going to happen, you will know about it. Thank you again for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye, guys.